It started with a box. A simple, unmarked cardboard box left on my doorstep. No return address, no indication of who sent it. Just my name, Aiden Gray, scribbled on the top in shaky, almost childlike handwriting. I should have thrown it away. Every instinct told me to. But curiosity got the better of me, and so I carried it inside, setting it on the kitchen counter with a mix of unease and intrigue. Inside the box was a single object, an old, leather-bound diary. The cover was worn, the edges frayed, and a faint smell of mildew clung to it. Flipping it open, I saw the first page was blank, as was the second. But on the third page, the writing began, thin, spidery script that seemed hurried, almost frantic. The words were strange. To the finder of this book, you have inherited my curse. I am sorry. I did not mean to pass it on, but it must go to someone. It cannot stay with me any longer. I froze, rereading the lines. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned the page. The next entry was longer, detailing the writer's descent into madness after encountering something called a Hollow One. The diary's entries grew more chaotic the further I read. The writer, a man named Thomas Greaves, described how he had found the book much like I had, in an unmarked package on his doorstep. At first, he thought it was a prank. But then the dream started. It began with whispers. One entry read, I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, hearing voices just beyond my bedroom door. They would call my name, soft at first, then louder. When I opened the door, there was never anyone there. Another entry spoke of shadows that didn't belong, of shapes moving in the periphery of his vision. And then there were the warnings. Do not let it see you. Do not speak to it. Do not acknowledge it in any way. By the time I finished reading, the sun had set. The house felt colder than usual, the shadows deeper. I tried to brush off the unease, chalking it up to an overactive imagination. But that night, I dreamed of whispers. I woke at 3:15 a.m., my throat dry and my skin clammy. The whispers from my dream lingered in the air, faint but unmistakable. I sat up, straining to listen, and heard it clearly. My name, Aiden. The voice was soft, almost gentle, but it froze me to the core. I turned on the bedside lamp, my eyes darting around the room. Nothing, just my empty bedroom, silent except for the faint hum of the heater. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Over the next few days, the incidents escalated. Shadows seemed to move on their own, darting just out of sight. Objects in my house were subtly displaced. A glass left on the counter would appear in the sink. My keys moved from the table to the floor. I told myself it was stress, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew better. The first time I saw it, I almost didn't believe my own eyes. I was brushing my teeth, leaning over the bathroom sink, when I caught a glimpse of something behind me in a mirror. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, its face pale and featureless save for two hollow black voids where its eyes should have been. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest, but the bathroom was empty. Desperate for answers, I returned to the diary. Buried within the increasingly incoherent entries were fragments of advice, warnings from Thomas Greaves to whoever found the book next. It will try to make you see it. Ignore it at all costs. It will call your name. Do not answer. Do not leave the book. It is the only thing keeping it at bay. That last rule chilled me. Keeping the book. I had already considered burning it, throwing it away, anything to rid myself of this nightmare. But the warnings were clear. The book was a tether, a shield against whatever the Hollow One was. And then I found the final entry. If you are reading this, I am gone. It will claim you as it claimed me. Do not let it feed on your fear. That is how it grows stronger. I've always considered myself rational, logical. But logic didn't explain the way my lights flickered at random or the faint sound of footsteps in my empty hall. Logic didn't explain the figure that now haunted my every reflection, closer each time I saw it. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt its presence. The weight of its gaze, the oppressive cold that seeped into my bones. It wasn't just haunting my house, it was haunting me. One night, as I sat in my living room with every light in the house on, the whispers returned. They were louder this time, more insistent. Aiden, why do you run? I froze, the book clutched in my hands. The voice was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. My breath hitched as I scanned the room, my eyes landing on the mirror above the fireplace. The hollow one stood there on the other side of the glass, watching me. "What do you want?" I whispered, forgetting the second rule. Its head tilted, its hollow eyes narrowing, and then it smiled. From that moment, everything changed. The hollow one was no longer content to linger in the shadows. It began appearing more frequently, always just out of reach. It would stand at the end of my hallway, its elongated fingers curling against the wall. It would crouch in the corner of my bedroom, its eyeless sockets fixed on me as I pretended to sleep. The worst part was the dreams. Every night, I found myself in a vast, empty expanse, a void of endless gray. The hollow one was always there, its towering form looming over me. It never spoke, but its whispers filled the air, echoing inside my skull until I woke up screaming. I stopped going to work, stopped answering calls from friends and family. I couldn't explain what was happening, and even if I could, who would believe me? The diary became my only companion, its pages offering fragmented guidance and fleeting hope. One entry caught my attention. Unlike the others, it was written in a steadier hand, as if Thomas had regained some measure of control. I found something, a way to end it. The hollow one can be banished, but it requires a sacrifice. Something precious, something irreplaceable. I didn't understand what it meant, but it gave me a sliver of hope. If Thomas had found a way to fight back, maybe I could too. I began researching obsessively, diving into folklore and urban legends, anything that might give me a clue. The more I learned, the more I realized the hollow one wasn't unique. Every culture had stories of shadowy figures that fed on fear, entities that lingered on the edge of perception. But none of the accounts offered a clear solution. Weeks blurred together as I pieced together scraps of information. Finally, I discovered a ritual, a desperate, cobbled-together act of defiance that might sever the curse. The instructions were vague, but I followed them to the letter. At midnight, I sat in the center of my living room, surrounded by a circle of salt. The diary lay open in front of me, its pages stained with wax from the candles that flickered around the room. "Show yourself," I said, my voice steady despite the terror clawing at my chest. The lights flickered, and the temperature plummeted. The hollow one stepped out of the shadows, its towering form bending unnaturally to fit the room. For the first time, it spoke aloud, its voice a guttural rasp that echoed in my mind. "You cannot escape me." But I wasn't trying to escape. Clutching the diary, I began to read aloud the incantation I had found, my voice shaking but resolute. The hollow one recoiled, its form flickering like a glitching image. Its whispers grew frantic, pleading, angry. The room trembled, and for a moment I thought the ritual had worked. But then everything went silent. The hollow one vanished, leaving me alone in the dark. The relief was short-lived. I soon realized the ritual hadn't banished the hollow one. It had merely weakened it. The whispers returned, quieter but more insidious. The shadows still moved, and the dreams persisted. And then I understood the final rule. The curse couldn't be destroyed, only passed on. I packed the diary into a box, sealing it carefully. With trembling hands, I addressed it to someone. Anyone, writing a name I had seen in a news article about urban legends. I left it on their doorstep, walking away without looking back. The hollow one's whispers faded as I drove home, but guilt gnawed at me. I had condemned someone else to this nightmare, but I told myself it was necessary. I couldn't live like that anymore. Weeks passed, and for the first time in months, I slept soundly. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the whispers will return. And every time, I think of the name I wrote on that box, hoping they'll forgive me. The hollow one is out there, waiting for its next victim. If you find a box on your doorstep, unmarked and innocuous, do yourself a favor, don't open it. Epilogue. The cycle continues. Far away, a man named David Peters found a box on his porch. Simple, unmarked. Curiosity overcame him, and he brought it inside. Later that night, as he opened the diary, the whispers began.